Good afternoon, everyone. DM Geezer Jim here, starting out a new series. We're going to do it called RTFM Dungeon Master's Guide 2024, Reading the Frickin' Manual. A lot of times on my Twitch stream, we get into a lot of heavy lore, a lot of concepts, D&D concepts, campaign building, adventures, all that. One of the things I try to recommend very heavily is the concept of RTFM, reading the content to make it your own. But I also have to acknowledge a lot of people don't have the time or the resource to actually read it. So instead of shaking my fist at everyone and saying, you should read the book, I'm going to read the book to you. So this series will be centered completely on the Dungeon Master's Guide, the new one, the 2024 release. We'll probably keep each video around 20 to 30 minutes, focusing on a particular chapter, a couple of the sections within the chapter, and then a little bit of commentary. So I don't end up losing myself to stream of consciousness. I'm going to just read through the appropriate section to begin with, and then at the end of it, we'll kind of do a quick review of it and talk about some of the points with a little bit of my opinion. Before you might be going along, you're like, who the hell is this guy and why should I listen to him? Well, I mean, that's fair. There's 1,001 of us talking heads on YouTube. What makes me different than anyone else? I'm a professional GM. I'm a professional dungeon master. Currently, I am running 24 game sessions per month, 20 of them that are paid, 4 of them that are friends and family. Running all 5th edition 2014 with a couple 2024 changeovers making their way into some of the campaigns. I work at a local gaming shop, the FLGS, the friendly local gaming stores called RPG Dungeons over in Addison here in the DFW area. So I do speak with a little bit of authority as far as someone that's able to manage 20 paid games per month with in excess of 65 paid and public games, 65 plus players going in and out of the game. So a lot of my techniques have to work because my livelihood depends on it. So let's get into the reading here. Like I said, we're just going to read through a couple of the sections. At the end of it, I will stop at the end of each section and kind of give a little bit of editorial content, a little bit of commentary, if you will. Promise I'll try to make it relevant to the new Dungeon Masters, because this 2024 DM's Guide, in my opinion, has been written for the DM who's never tried it before. For the people that are sitting on there going, I want to play D&D, but I can't find a Dungeon Master. Well, I want a DM, but it sounds like it's going to be a hard thing. This book was written for you in mind. It does not target me. It does not have it doesn't care about I don't want to sound like a dick, but it's not written to the 40-year Dungeon Master veteran. It's not written to the guy that's been playing since 83, since 93, since 2003. We have our own way of handling things. We've learned the hard way. So it's okay to have a book that's going to teach us the right way to do things, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. So, or a right way, not the right way, a good place to start. So if you're a veteran, if you've been around the block a few times, try to keep in context that this book was written for your brand new DM who's genuinely looking at the idea of being a Dungeon Master. They're scared of it. It's intimidating. There's so much that goes into it. And there is. Those are all valid feelings and valid concerns. But thankfully, we have a resource that goes a long way to addressing some of the holistic concerns of a Dungeon Master. So let's get into it. We're going to get into Dungeon Master's Guide 2024, Reading the Manual, RTFM, Chapter 1, The Basics. Dungeons and Dragons is a game in which you and your friends take on roles and tell a short shared story. While the player's handbook teaches you how to play the game and how to create characters who are the heroes of the story, the Dungeon Master's Guide is written for the player who presides over the game and makes sure everyone is having fun. This player is the Dungeon Master, or DM. Being a Dungeon Master is a fun, empowering, and rewarding experience, and this chapter walks you through the basics. Sorry about that. What does a DM do? The DM gets to play many fun roles. An actor, the DM plays the monsters, choosing their actions and rolling dice for their attacks. The DM also plays all of the people that the characters will meet. A director, like the director of a movie, the DM decides and describes what the player's characters encounter in the course of an adventure. The DM is also responsible for the pace of a play session and for creating situations that facilitate fun. Improviser. A big part of being a DM is deciding how to apply the rules as you go and imagining the consequences of the character's actions in a way that will make the game fun for everyone. Referee. When it's not clear what ought to happen next, the DM decides how to apply the rules. Storyteller. The DM crafts adventures, setting situations in front of the characters that entice them to explore and interact with the game world. A teacher. It's often the DM's job to teach new players how to play the game. And a world builder. The DM creates the world where the game's adventures take place. Even if you're using a published setting, you get to make it yours. The next section is DM tips. The most important part of being a good DM is facilitating the fun of everyone at the table. Keep these tips in mind to help things go smoothly. Embrace the shared story. D&D is about telling a story as a group, so let the other players contribute through their words and deeds of their characters. Encourage players to engage by asking them what their characters are doing. It's not a competition. The DM isn't competing against the other players. It's your job as a DM to provide fun challenges and keep the story moving. Be fair and flexible. Treat your players in a fair, impartial manner. The rules help you do this, but when you need to act as a referee, try to make decisions that ensure everyone is having fun. Communicate with your players. Open communication is essential to a successful D&D game. Many problems can be solved or even prevented with honest conversations. Ask questions and solicit feedback after or between your sessions. It's okay to make mistakes. If you overlook or misrepresent something, correct yourself and move on. No one expects you to memorize every rule or detail. Even if you don't realize your mistake until after a game session is over, it's okay to acknowledge the mistake at the start of the next session and make adjustments moving forward. Sidebar, what's new in the 2024 version? This is the 2024 version of the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Much of the book has been reorganized, expanded, and rewritten from the 2014 version, and the version of things in this book replaced the version from older books. Here are a few highlights. Sound advice. Every chapter, but especially chapters 1, 2, 4, and 5, has new advice for dungeon masters of all experience levels. Tracking sheets. Helpful sheets throughout the book give you the tools to plan your game and keep track of your campaign. These sheets are also available for download in the Appendix C. Encounter building assistance. The rules for estimating the difficulty of combat encounters has changed, as you'll see in Chapter 4. Ready-made elements, sample adventures in Chapter 4, a campaign setting in Chapter 5, and new maps in Appendix B make it easier to run a game right away. Expanded and revised magic items. Chapter 7 is packed with new magic items and old ones that have been revised. Bastions. Chapter 8 has rules that allow players to build, maintain, and enjoy their own strongholds. And a lore glossary. In Appendix A, a helpful glossary explains many of the iconic people and locations found throughout the D&D multiverse. So the next section, things you need. I know what a DM does. Now, what do I need to have to be a DM? That's this next section. What you need to play has not changed much since the game's first publication in 1974. You'll need rule books. As the Dungeon Master, you'll need this book plus the Player's Handbook, which contains most of the rules of the game, and the Monster Manual. Your players need access to the Player's Handbook as well, too, but they can share it as needed. Let the players know beforehand what books, other than the Player's Handbook, they can reference during a playing session. For example, it's not appropriate for players to look up a monster in the Monster Manual or the equivalent digital tool while fighting that monster. If you're running a published adventure, players should avoid reading that adventure so they don't spoil any surprises. The next thing you'll need is a Dungeon Master. One player has the special role of Dungeon Master. Some people love being the DM all the time, while others can end up feeling trapped as the forever DM for their gaming group. The group size section in Chapter 2 discusses possibilities for sharing the role of Dungeon Master among multiple players in a group. You also need players. Players who aren't the Dungeon Master take on the role of the heroes, also known as the characters or the adventurers. D&D plays best with 4 to 6 players in addition to the DM, but it's possible to run a game with fewer or more adventurers. See the group size section in Chapter 2 for advice on doing so. Finding players. Where do you find players? Here's a handful of suggestions. Games or hobby stores. The store locator on the Wizard of the Coast website can help you find stores near you that host D&D events. friends, families, community members, and work colleagues who enjoy gaming or fantasy, gaming clubs at schools, social media and online messaging sites, and gaming conventions. These are all places that you can find players. The next thing you need is a place to play. The bare minimum of space you need to play D&D is room for everyone in your group to gather and participate. When choosing the space you'll be playing in, enlist your players' help. Think about any accessibility needs you or they might have. Some players might have difficulty with low light, with background music, with strong orders, cramped spaces, or specific allergens. Accommodate what you can and communicate what you cannot accommodate as early as possible. If possible, play in an area with minimal visual or auditory distractions. Favor surroundings that reinforce your desired atmosphere and have little non-player traffic. If space is shared, reserve the space in advance. You can also play D&D anywhere you might come together in an online space, from a group video call to a sophisticated virtual tabletop. Sidebar: scheduling games. Sometimes the hardest thing about running a game is finding a time where everyone can play. Some groups play a few hours every week, while others set aside a whole day once per month. Create a schedule that works best for your group. For new groups, it often helps to schedule a single session game, often called a one-shot, as a way for people to try it out. If everyone has a great time at that one session, it can be easier to get them to make a long-term commitment. Scheduling conflicts are sometimes inescapable. The group size section in Chapter 2 offers some advice on what to do when a player has to miss a session. Dice. Goes without saying, but you need a full set of polyhedral dice: a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20. It's helpful to have at least 2 of each kind. Ideally, each player should also have their own set of polyhedral dice. Lots of digital dice rollers exist. Simple browser-based dice rollers are easily found on the internet. Specialized diced apps can be found in app stores, and virtual tabletops typically have dice rolling functionality built into them. Note-taking materials. Everyone needs some way to take notes. During every round of combat, someone needs to keep track of initiative, hit points, conditions, and other information. Players often like to take notes about what happens in the adventure, and at least one of them should record any clues and treasures that the characters collect. We'll need character sheets. Players need some way to record important information about their characters. Plain paper works fine, but players might find an official or fan-made character sheet more helpful in organizing the information. A variety of digital character sheets are also available if you're playing online or using digital devices at the table. Campaign journal. Throughout this book, you'll find tracking sheets that you can use to make your work as a DM easier. They range from sheets you can use to track NPCs or settlements in your game to trackers you can use to make sure you're giving the adventurers a good number of magic items. These tracking sheets can form the basis of a campaign journal, see Chapter 5, and they'll help you plan your adventures and build your world. You can scan or photocopy these sheets for your personal use, and you'll find downloadable versions in Appendix C. Useful additions. Various resources can enrich your game and make it more fun. Many of these resources might have digital versions, making computers, tablets, and smartphones essential elements in some D&D games and for some players. DM screen. A DM screen shields your books, notes, and die rolls from your players. See the Ensuring Fun for All section later in this chapter for more about when and why you might want to hide die rolls. Most DM screens have art on the outward-facing panels and handy rules information on the inside-facing panels. Others might be made of fancy wood or sculpted to help to set the mood for your table. You don't need a physical screen to hide the things if you're playing online, but it can be helpful to have ready access to important information like condition definitions, common actions, and other key rules. Some DMs set up a physical DM screen near their computer screen. A virtual tabletop might have reference information like this built into it. You might need, this is again useful additions, adventures, and source books. Beyond the 3 core rule books, a plethora of additional content is available from Wizards of the Coast and other publishers. Adventure books provide hooks, plots, maps, and encounters that you can use in your games. Source books include things like new character options, new monsters, and inspiration for building your own adventures and campaigns. You can play D&D without any of these additional products, but many DMs and players find them to be exciting additions to the game. Battle grids and miniatures. Some DMs use a battle grid and miniatures to run combat encounters, which helps players visualize scenes when playing in person. a vinyl wet erase mat with a printed grid, a gridded whiteboard, a cutting mat, a large sheet of gridded paper, or a printed poster map. Any of these can serve as a battle grid. The grid should be marked in 1-inch squares. You'll also need plastic or metal miniatures to represent characters and monsters in the game, but you can use coins, extra dice, paper counters, or even pieces of candy if miniatures are unavailable. Many software tools designed to facilitate online D&D play provide a battle grid. Even without such tools, though, many online D&D games use screen sharing in combination with drawing programs, shared whiteboards, or similar tools as simple battle grids. Some DMs are comfortable with software that allows them to control lighting and show the players exactly what they see. Others find that complex software gets in the way of the game. Use whatever works for you and your group. Card accessories is our next section here. Some players and DMs find it helpful to have information available in the form of cards. You can buy or make cards with individual spells, magic items, monster stat blocks, rules references, and similar information for easy reference. So we're going to go ahead and we'll call this episode 1 here. I do want to give a little bit of commentary about what a DM does and things that you'll need. The first 2 things we covered in today's reading. So what a DM does, this is a very good section. Actor, director, improviser, referee, storyteller, teacher, world builder. We wear a lot of hats when we do this, and you will find yourself exercising your skills in each of these areas. You don't have to be perfect at every one of these things, but being a DM will touch on each of these cornerstones. The more you play, the more you run, the better you will get. Dungeon mastering is one of those things that you can get the concept pretty, through reading, but only through consistent repeated play. Repetition will you develop the skills to become better at each of these facets, okay? The DM tips is an excellent thing. The main focus here that I hope that you get out of this is the idea that we are playing a game and it's supposed to be fun for everyone. You're not using your rules to torment your players. You're not using a story to restrict. You're trying to build a shared, collaborative, fun experience. Please do not forget that you are playing a game here. Okay? It's not a competition. It's not DM versus the players. If that's the case, then every campaign ends in the first fight and you go home and go on with life, right? Being fair and flexible, communicating with your players, and being okay with making mistakes. These 3 things are all tied together, okay? Being fair means exactly what it is. You're going to treat every player at the table the same way. They're going to have the same stakes in the game. They're going to have the same vote when it comes time for something. There is no, you're the most important, you're the least important player. That shouldn't be a thing at your tables, okay? Communicating with your players, asking for feedback after or between sessions. One of the key things I want to put here for a new DM, and even an experienced DM, is if you're soliciting feedback, you need to be quiet and take the feedback. You don't need to use this as an opportunity to justify why you played this encounter this way, or try to explain to the player that, no, you didn't understand what I was trying to say. You're asking for feedback so you can adjust how you're presenting your encounters, how you're presenting your dialogue, to make sure that your players can interact with it. Okay, if they're not connecting with it, it may not be their fault, it may be your fault. So being willing to communicate with your players, take their feedback into account, and move forward is going to be huge as you become a DM. And last thing here that we want to talk about in the DM tips, it's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes every session. It's important to own those mistakes. It's important to say, hey, y'all, yeah, you're right. Oh, crap, you're right. I did do that wrong. I'm so sorry. Let's go. Because that's going to build the bond with your players. That's going to ensure to them that this is a fair, balanced, shared experience. That you have the table's fun and the table's interest at heart. Be okay with acknowledging when you make a mistake. You're not infallible, okay? So the first 2 sections are pretty good for a new DM. It gives you an idea what you're in for, and it really gives you an idea what to be prepared for. The things that you need to play. This is all pretty much self-explanatory. The one thing I want to talk about is the useful additions, okay? Don't spend a lot of time and resources running down all of the virtual tabletops, dozens of other source books, trying to buy a 3D printer so you can make your minis and print 3D terrain for the battle map until you're sure you're going to need them for you and your group, okay? A lot of DMs have spent a small fortune getting into the game and never ran a game or find that a lot of their tools aren't useful for how they're running a game. So get in there, get used to playing a game before you start spending a lot of resources. That's why I think this section is called Useful Additions. Eventually, you may hit the point where life without a virtual tabletop isn't right. If I can't play D&D without a VTT, I don't want to play it. Don't start out with that mindset, though. Try to minimize your expenditures to match what you need to enhance the game as you learn it. Okay? So that's chapter 1, the basics. What does a DM do, and the things that you need to start playing D&D. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back for the next part of chapter 2. We'll go over preparing a session and how to run a session in my next video. We will cover all of these facets. Feel free to leave comments and questions in the comments and question sections here. If you enjoyed this video, push likes, follow, subscribe. We're going to do the whole book. So hopefully you can get something out of it. Even if you don't have access to the book, you'll have access to my videos and you can listen to us read through it. But yeah, last but not least, likes, follows, subscribes. If you want to get more involved in some of our other discussions, feel free to join us over on Twitch. DM Geezer Jim's the handle over there. I'd love to have you in for a live chat. We're there 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, U.S. Central Standard Time, chatting Tuesdays through Saturdays. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time here. Time is a valuable thing, and I appreciate you sharing it with me. We'll be back for another video continuing through Chapter 1 here in a little bit. Likes, follows, subscribes, comments, questions are appreciated. We'll see you soon.